We're sitting on stage 22 at Paramount, and we're watching them do the pilot for Perfect Strangers. And next to me, on one side, is the lady that was the head of ABC Comedy, and Bob Boyette's on the other side. And she turns to me and says, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I don't think it's going to work." And she kind of went, "What?" I said, the actor you got playing Larry, there's just no chemistry between him and Bronson Pinchot. And I think Bob Boyette wanted to kill me. So they finish the show, they edit the show, they screen it with the ABC execs, and the lights come up and the guy says, "Great show, guys. Recast the part of Larry." So,
and the rest is TV history. You are listening to the Act One podcast. I'm your host, James Duke. Thank you for listening to our little podcast. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave us a good review. My guest today is writer-producer Michael Warren. Michael began his illustrious career writing for television as executive story consultant on the classic television show Happy Days. He then went on to Warner Brothers, where he was an executive producer on Perfect Strangers. He also co-created and executive produced two of the longest-running shows on ABC television, Step by Step and Family Matters, featuring the legendary character Steve Urkel, which TV Guide listed as one of the 50 most popular television characters of all time. He also executive produced Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Getting By, The Family Man, KIRK, MEEGO, and Two of a Kind. He presently has over 800 episodes of television in syndication. Michael is a longtime friend of Act One, and we have a wonderful conversation about his television career. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Act One podcast, Mr. Michael Warren. It's great to have you.
Good to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. I obviously have been a fan of your work for years, but also just a fan of you. You've been a longtime supporter and faculty member of Act One, and of course, you were part of the original intermission community, for those who are listening in who remember the old intermission community, as well as so many other things. And you even taught at Biola for a while too, didn't you? Did you teach screenwriting?
I taught two sort of introductory screenwriting courses at Biola. And after years of doing that, I persuaded them to actually hire a full-time faculty member to teach writing, so I didn't have to drive to Costa Mesa.
Well, it's great to have you. There's a lot I wanted to spend time talking with you about, but let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and start back at the beginning. Now, obviously not the very, very, very beginning, but I do want to start off with, if I remember, I've read a little bit about your career. I believe you and Bill Bickley, you first connected at a church. Isn't that kind of where you guys first met and got connected as writers?
We met at the First Baptist Church of Beverly Hills, which is very high class sounding, but it wasn't. It was a tiny little church. And I think he was doing room 222 at the time. And we became friends. Our wives became friends. In fact, our wives went through their first pregnancies together. And I was working for the Billy Graham film production company in Burbank. And he said he got a job as I think his credit was actually producer on The Partridge Family. And he hired me to be the associate producer. And then he went over to Happy Days to become the producer, and he hired me to be the associate producer on Happy Days. And it was during that season that Happy Days really took off. It became the #1 show on television. And we started writing together because Bill had bought the rights to a book. And he wanted to know if I wanted to join him and write a screenplay based on this book, which we did. The screenplay never went anywhere, but we had such a good time writing it that we teamed up as writers.
Wow.
And we spent, I think, 4 or 5 seasons as writers on Happy Days. So that was really the first writing credit I ever had, was on that show.
So before you connect, it's pretty amazing that your first writing credit is Happy Days. But anyway, you're before then, was this a goal or dream of yours? I'm just curious where this interest in working in the business. You said you were working at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, their film film company. But right. Where did this come from? Did you grow up originally kind of wanting? Was there like a calling in your life? I'm just curious where this interest came from.
I actually wanted to be an architect, and I had a teacher in high school named William Witkowski, which encouraged me to go to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And when I got to Pratt Institute, profoundly naive, the day that I was registering, I realized that the architecture program was 5 years and you had to take calculus. So I made a step to the left in the lineup and signed up as a graphic arts major.
I wonder how many art majors became art majors because of calculus. That's
well, it was pretty daunting. I think I actually failed high school trigonometry, so I knew that this was not going to work. And by my sophomore year at Pratt Institute, which was an excellent school, I realized I had absolutely no talent as a graphic artist. But I took a film course, and it was called Film as Art, and it was taught by the guy that ran Cinematech 16 in Manhattan. And I thought, oh, I can do art without having any drafting skills. So I dropped out of Pratt, went to Southern Illinois University and became a communications major and took classes in playwriting and film production. Came out to USC in the cinema department and spent 3 semesters there until I ran out of money, dropped out, and took a job at Universal. They had just purchased an educational department from someplace, and we made these sort of we did a film for the state of South Carolina for their bicentennial and things like that. And I never really had any inkling of being a writer. I just wanted to be in film production in some capacity. I think every film major wants to be a director.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And when later down the line, when Bill said, why don't we write something together? I thought, well, I don't know anything about writing. I took one writing class with Erwin Blacker at USC. And my wife said, well, why don't you try it? Maybe you'll like it. So I tried writing and I did like it. And we were rather successful. I mean, it was a series of writing assignments on TV shows, and we started producing shows, and we started creating shows, and we got some shows on the air. So it turned into a 27-year career that was basically writing. I mean, there's a lot of other things producers do, but that's what you have to do every week, is you have to come up with a script.
What is it about writing that you think appealed to you, especially early on when you thought to yourself, oh, I think I can do this?
Well, first of all, it's just great fun. And I think people said I had a sense of humor. So it came rather easy. I mean, I must confess, I wasn't the writer that was struggling with writer's block. And the stories always came to us pretty easily. And we were very fast. We learned that being fast was a tremendous asset in the television business, because every week as a producer, you've basically got 6 stories in works. You're 6 weeks out in the development schedule. So you're working at 6 different shows in different stages of development all the way up until production week. And the reward for being successful, of course, in television is they ask you to do more. Thank you very much. Can you do it again?
Is it being someone who has created so much, I'm sure you don't love it when people say this kind of stuff to you, but it's true. There's so much iconic television. were you a fan of television that you didn't write? Like, I'm just curious, like before you became a writer, what were some of your favorite television shows? And like the sitcom itself, do you love sitcoms? Are there certain sitcoms that you just point to and go, man, I wish I would have created that. I wish I would have written for that show.
Yeah, I wish I'd created Big Bang Theory. Yeah, I was my generation, I think, fell in love with the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was a writerly project.
Carl Reiner, right? Carl Reiner.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those shows. And working on Happy Days, I got to know Gary Marshall fairly well. In fact, Gary was the first script Gary had us write for Happy Days was the story about Fonzie's motorcycle is wrecked when one of the guys backs his car over the motorcycle, and he's convinced that Donnie Most has to leave the country and change his name because he's afraid Fonzie's going to kill him. And Gary brought us into his office and he said, this is one of the best freelance scripts, because we were freelance writers at that point. Why don't you guys come on staff? And that was the beginning of a long-term relationship with Gary, who was a big mentor to us. He taught me a lot about writing and the mechanics of writing.
Did he write for Dick Van Dyke? Did he write for Carl Reiner on that show?
Oh gosh, probably. Gary wrote just a ton of material during the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, and of course did Odd Couple and Love American Style and a lot of ABC shows.
And Love American Style, for people who don't remember, so Happy Days was kind of like an offshoot. Like there was a standalone. So Love American Style was kind of like an anthology show, right? Where every episode was kind of different. And there was this one episode that featured the Cunninghams, right? And that became Happy Days. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, it's Love American Style was an anthology. And so what it did was it was the perfect place to generate pilots. So Gary wrote an episode. I think Gary wrote the episode of television in I don't know what it was called, Happy Days and Television or something like that. And Ron Howard was in it, and Harold Gold was the father.
Yep.
And they did the episode kind of as a backdoor pilot, and ABC passed on it. Well, then Ron Howard did American Graffiti, which was a big hit.
Yes.
So ABC came back to Gary and said, wait a minute, maybe we passed on that too quickly. So they had them redo the pilot, and Harold Gould wasn't available at the time. So they recast the people, and Henry Winkler wasn't in the original.
Right.
But Henry Winkler came on, and they did the pilot, and of course it went on the air and was a big hit. So yeah, it was kind of a roundabout history as to how it came to be.
And you and Bill came on what season?
Well, Bill came on originally as the producer.
Okay.
And I came on the second season as an associate producer.
Got it.
And then I think the fourth season was when I came on as a writer with Bill.
And by then the show was number one. It was
the fourth season was the big hit season for Happy Days. Yeah. Of course, it ran for 250 episodes. So.
Yeah, I mean that's half my childhood was watching Happy Days. I remember the end. Towards the end, I was already watching reruns, and so I would watch the reruns, and then the final episodes would play on ABC, and I remember watching them at night. And I remember the episode when Richie left. I remember the famous episode where Richie punched Fonzie. That was like such a, I even think ABC, promoted it as a very special episode or something.
Right.
But one of the things that I think is fascinating, and we'll get to Family Matters at some point, but there's a connection there between the Family Matters and Steve Urkel that you guys created and Happy Days. And that is this interesting thing kind of in television history where both shows had a character that didn't start off as a member of the main cast, but ended up becoming one of the most popular characters of all of television. And so Fonzie, can you talk a little bit about that. What happened? Henry Winkler was brought in. Fonzie was just this kind of side character, and then he just became Fonzie.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because Gary's intention of the character was that he wouldn't speak. And I think in the first episode he said maybe 3 lines, one of them being "Hey," and ABC didn't like the character because he was wearing a motorcycle jacket and he was sort of a high school dropout, and they said, what do we need this guy for? But Gary fought for him, and he said, well, you need somebody to sort of play the counterpart to Ronnie and Donnie and Anson and these sort of clean cut guys. I think Gary saw him as a needed element in the makeup of the show, and of course it took off, and the TV audience identified with him, and Gary got his wish. He let him. ABC finally let him wear the motorcycle jacket instead of a windbreaker.
Did it ever become like a point of? I mean, there's so much that's been written and discussed from other people. I'm just curious, from your perspective, was there ever kind of any level of jealousy or frustration by some of the other cast members because Fonzie became so popular?
I think the Happy Days cast were very smart actors, and I think they saw that this was a rising tide raises all boats kind of thing, where this was good for the show, and they should hang in there. And they were all friends. They all had a baseball team and played other shows on the weekends, and it was the greatest cast I ever worked with. I mean, they were really just amazing.
Marion Ross.
Well, Marion Ross and Tom Bosley, and Ron was a great sort of team captain for the show. I mean, he saw the worth of this. Yeah. So it was all good. And I think it was one of the reasons why the show stayed on for so long, is that sense got communicated to the audience that these people liked each other.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, as a kid, I have such distinct memories of watching Happy Days. Like, the joke that people use now of the whole jumping the shark thing that came from that. Like, I remember that episode. That was an exciting episode to me as a kid. Will Fonzie make it over the shark? I don't know why. Like, that was right. And then when his girlfriend Pinky or whatever her name was, she got hurt in the stunt, and he was like, I remember all those things. Like, I watched way too much television. First of all, you should know that. But those were kind of iconic moments to me, and I remember them so vividly. For you, looking back, having written so much that's kind of in the zeitgeist now, that you were participating in the stuff that is now in the cultural zeitgeist. Do you look back at that differently than someone like me? Like, do you remember it differently? Does it just seem like, that was just we had no idea what we were doing in the room. We were just trying to push an episode out.
It was, you were really just trying to get through the day. And, the writing schedule of a half hour, at least when I was in the business, was, you left work at about 11. And when car phones got out, I would call my wife and talk to her because she wasn't going to stay up until I got home. And we would have the end of the day conversation. And then the next day you'd start at 10 o'clock in the morning. And when I became a producer on other shows, I once asked the staff, I said, look, why don't we start at like 9, like normal people? And one by one, the cast members came into my office and closed the door and said, I can't start work at 9 because that's when I have my therapy appointment. So I think that's why TV starts at 10 a.m.
That's great. Yes, all the therapists in town are booked solid.
Right. Can't get a 9 o'clock appointment.
Can't get one anywhere. Gary Marshall, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Gary Marshall before he passed away. And I actually had him speak at Act One once that year. And he was lovely. And of course, He did so much. He was so prolific, and you talked about that a little bit earlier. I'm curious, like when you look back, you mentioned he was like a mentor to you. What's one of the most important things you learned from working with Gary Marshall? What was like one or two of the big takeaways you took from him?
Well, I think he was an absolute genius. I know that word's used too much, but he could point to his routine was. When you went to the run through, particularly the network run through, he'd go back up to the writer's room with everybody, and he would put his finger on what the problem was. He'd say, look, act 1, scene 3 doesn't work, guys, because it's not consistent with the thrust of the story, and it's the act break. So it's really important. And I think his ability to kind of get at the nut of the story was profound. And you sit in a room with a bunch of writers, and the other guy that was great at doing this was Lowell Gans. When Lowell Gans was producing Happy Days, he would sit and listen, and he'd say, no, that doesn't work. Yes, this does work. Keep it on track. And when you had that conversation that would last for about an hour in the story pitch, he would then from memory recount the major beats of every scene in the show. And he'd go through them one by one, and everybody would take notes. And so when the writer that was going to write the outline left the room, had a very clear vision of what the story was. And, in a writer's room, sometimes somebody will pitch a joke that everybody laughs at. And it's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And Lowell would say, yeah, that's great for the room, guys, but it doesn't go in the script.
Yeah.
Because it's not on point. And I think that was the greatest thing I learned from Gary, was just how to stay focused on, so you didn't go off. When we were executive producing shows, we had showrunners working for us. I remember one time Dave Duclon pitched a story for Happy Days, and he said Carl and Jay go to a motel for some excursion. And in the closet of the hotel, there's a Congo drum. And I said, David, I haven't traveled extensively, but I've been in a number of hotels in my life, and I've never found a Congo drum in the closet. So sometimes writers fall in love with things that don't work.
And what keeps a joke in? Is it if Gary laughs at it? Is it Gans laughs at it? Like, what keeps a joke in versus having a joke not make it in the script?
Well, the guy at the head of the table makes the final decision. It's easy for, I was not a great joke guy. I was more of a story guy. But whoever was at the head of the table, whether it was me or Lowell or Gary, was never at the head of the actual writing table, but whoever's the head guy has the decision. And he says, that's out, that's in. And everybody knows that's the end of the discussion. And it's not a democracy.
Yeah. I've heard that a few times about writers. And also, right, when you have a cast like you guys had, and just the situational comedy, when you have these actors who are capable of physical comedy, you're in front of a live audience and you can milk something right? That's got to be fun. Just kind of thinking up situations and moments that those actors are going to have fun with in front of that live studio audience.
Well, yeah, and if you get lucky enough to have the cast of Happy Days or a show like Perfect Strangers, it's amazing. It's actually a challenge because you can't write long scripts because the actors are just going to embellish a stage direction into 30 seconds of comedy, and you're killing me, guys.
That's great. I read an old article about you and Bill Bickley, and Gary is quoted as calling, "Oh yeah, those are the minister," or something. He called you like the ministers or something.
Right.
And it's something about in the article where you guys said basically if there was ever anything in the script where there was like a priest or a nun or something, that he would have you guys write it.
I think that Gary always thought we were Catholics. I don't know why, but he did.
That's probably all he knew.
Yeah, he came to us one time and he said, I want to do a show where Fonzie has to get baptized. So you guys should write this. Well, the character Fonzie was a Catholic.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know anything about Catholic baptism. So we had to start calling priests and getting advisors to tell us what this was.
That's great. There of course were so many spinoffs of Happy Days. Do you remember the first time Robin Williams was on set doing Mork and Mindy? Was there some, not doing Mork and Mindy, but doing Mork? By the way, that is such a crazy, who came up with the idea of having an alien that Fonzie faces off against? Like, I believe there was an episode where, Fonzie faces off against an alien, Mork. And then Fonzie faces off, I think at one point against the devil or a demon or something. Yeah. Like, there were all these great episodes where Fonzie's facing off against these. So with Robin Williams, where did that come from? Had Gary seen Robin Williams do other stuff and that's where the idea came from?
Well, I wasn't on Happy Days the season that Robin came on, but the story I always heard was that they had written this script and they had cast somebody, and very early on in shoot week, it may have been at the Monday morning reading, I don't know, but somebody decided that the actor wasn't going to work. And so I don't know if Gary had seen Robin at one of the, Laugh Factory places around town, or somebody recommended him, but they brought him in like on Tuesday or Wednesday of shoot week. And he just, amazed everyone. The writers were concerned because they saw a lot of their dialogue get rewritten on the spot. But, it's just one of those fortunate things, which happens a lot on television. It happened with Family Matters. And so, that was one of the spinoffs. I mean, Mork was just so hot that ABC said, we got to do a show with this guy.
I find it so fascinating. And I think you guys, you didn't have a show, but I think there was a young Tom Hanks was on Happy Days, right? And
Tom Hanks. It was an interesting story. Gary wanted to do a show, and I don't know where this came from, that the character that Tom Hanks plays comes back to town and he's gay. And he has to sort of work that out with Fonzie. And we said to Gary, look, we don't want to write that show. It's just, to me, it's fraught with alienating a high percentage of your audience, no matter how it's written. And there's nothing physical about it. Why not do a show where this guy comes back and he's spent his entire life between when he left Milwaukee and when he comes back studying karate because he wants to beat up Fonzie.
Yes, I remember that episode.
Yes. And so I said it's going to have a lot of physicality to it, and how does Fonzie respond to this? And of course, the crux to the story is Fonzie doesn't even remember this guy.
Yes,
He's like, why are you angry with me? What did I ever do to you? Yes. So it was a lot of fun, and it's another example of trying to find the crux of the story that's going to work with the characters you've got and what they do best.
Yeah, and there's this really and Fonzie, I'm giving spoilers here if you haven't seen the 40-year-old episode of Family Happy Days. Fonzie lets him win. I remember
right.
because he wants him to. Yeah, I remember that's great. It's such a great character beat for Fonzie. Okay, so I love Happy Days. We've talked about it. Yeah, everyone gets it. The whole audience is like, we get it, Jimmy. You love Happy Days. Move on. All right. Now, you didn't work on Laverne and Shirley at all, right?
We wrote some episodes of Laverne and Shirley.
Okay, so you wrote a couple episodes. Okay. Which was another, once again, such a great show. It was just such a smart show. Once again, the cast, brilliant. You wrote on a show that I don't think gets talked about enough that I also loved as a kid. And that was What's Happening. You worked on What's Happening.
We did. We were called. What's Happening was they were afraid it was going to get canceled. So Bud Yorkin called us in and said, "Would you guys produce What's Happening?" And we were kind of uncomfortable because we'd never done a black show. And so we said, okay. So we took over the show. And during the summer, when we were prepping episodes, the show became a hit in reruns. So Bud Yorkin comes to us and says, okay, we don't need you guys.
Oh, really?
We really do know how to do the show.
Oh, wow.
We just needed summer reruns to kick us into being a hit.
Oh, wow.
So I think we were there for, well, he was very nice. I mean, it was a very cordial relationship. And it was kind of a kick working with Bud Yorkin. I mean, my gosh, talk about an icon of television.
Yeah.
I think we did 13 episodes. And we left that to do Love Boat. I don't know. It's all very hazy.
Which is another, right? I mean, Love Boat. It's another show. But you probably, once again, you probably have me to blame because as a little kid, I probably was the one watching it in reruns. What's Happening? I remember when they rebooted it. It was like one of the first reboots I'd ever heard of. They did What's Happening Now, and
yeah,
they do that all the time now. But back then, that was like unheard of. Love Boat. Let's go there. Let's go to Love Boat since you went there. So that's a different kind of show. So when you're first approached, I don't know how that works. Your agents, your managers, the studio calls you, whoever, and says, would you guys like to work on Love Boat? Did you give pause? Okay, wait, this is an hour long. It's a kind of a dramedy type show. Like, what were the thoughts going into writing for Love Boat after doing sitcoms? It
was very strange because somebody from ABC came to us and said, Love Boat's been on the air for 8 seasons. It's getting very tired. Would you guys like to come in and put it to bed? And we said, well, okay. So they said, well, you got to have a meeting with, it wasn't Spelling. It was, gosh, I've gone blank on his name, but it was the producer, exec producer. And he said, you got a meeting at his house Saturday night at 8:00 or something. So we drive up to Beverly Hills together. And in the car, I said, I don't think I've ever seen Love Boat. I don't remember. I have no memory of it at all. And Bill said, oh, this is not good. I've never seen it either. So we meet the exec producer, and there's small talk, and he says, so what do you think of Love Boat? And I said, I think it's kind of old fashioned. I figured a show that's been on the air for 8 years, it's got to be old fashioned. And he said, you know what? You're right. What would you guys do with Love Boat if you came on as producers? And I said, well, I know that it's 3 stories. I'd make each one of them a sitcom. And he kind of thought for a minute. He said, that really sounds interesting. And then he said something that really surprised me. He said, do you guys have passports and tuxedos? I said, yeah. He says, good. I want you to get on a ship. It's leaving from Miami. It's going to go through the Panama Canal. We're shooting an episode, last episode of this season. You go down there and watch how they do the show. So that's what we did.
Wow.
And we shot 24 episodes of Love Boat.
So wait a second. Love Boat used an actual cruise ship while people were going on a cruise?
they did 19 episodes a year on a stage at in Hollywood, and then they did 3 2-hour shows a year on actual boats.
Wow.
On actual ships. I mean, we did 2 where we got on the boat in Geneva, went through Gibraltar all the way around to Hamburg, Germany, and then we did another one in Spain or someplace, I forget. It was such an crazy schedule. But yeah, we hired 3 writers for each hour-long episode and had them do basically a 20-minute airtime of basically a sort of sitcom with romantic overtones.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the end of the series.
You put it to bed like that.
ABC kept it on the air for one more season.
I think shortly after that, you somewhere around this time period is where you connected with the Miller Boyette team, right? And you began working with them. Is that right?
Well, we had worked with Tom Miller and Eddie Milkus on Happy Days. They were the exec producers of Happy Days along with Gary. And then Eddie Milkus died, and Tom Miller teamed up with Bob Boyette, and it became Miller Boyette for a number of years. Boyette had been with ABC. He was a network exec for a long time. And so, yeah, they had done a pilot for Perfect Strangers.
For Perfect Strangers, and that was like the start. Perfect Strangers was like the start of TGIF, wasn't it? Like that was like
right,
the first,
right.
Yeah.
So they brought us over, and this was another one of those moments where inadvertently you become a genius. And we're sitting on stage 22 at Paramount, and Tom and Bob didn't like to shoot their pilots in front of an audience. They liked to block and shoot them over a 2-day period. So a bunch of people are sitting in the stands watching the show, and we're watching them do the pilot for Perfect Strangers. And next to me on one side is the lady that was the head of ABC Comedy, and Bob Boyette's on the other side. And she turns to me and says, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I don't think it's going to work." And she kind of went, "What?" I said, the actor you got playing Larry, there's just no chemistry between him and Bronson Pinchot. And I think Bob Boyette wanted to kill me. So she gave me one of those looks like, "Well, what do you know? Who are you?" She doesn't know me from Adam. Yeah. So they finish the show, they edit the show, they take it in for the screenings, which we didn't go to because it didn't have anything to do with the show officially. Tom and Bob just asked us to come over as friends and watch the show. And so the story I heard back from Bob is they screen it with the ABC execs, and the lights come up, and the guy says, "Great show, guys. Recast the part of Larry."
Wow.
So,
and the rest is TV history.
Right. I mean,
you were a prophet. Yeah, like that's giving advice to future screenwriters and television writers. Maybe don't give that note to this to the network executive.
Well, I didn't have anything at stake,
Right.
Do anything. I didn't even know that Tom and Bob were particularly interested in having us come on the show. I just thought it was like, hey, this will be fun. But so they hired us to be, I don't know, some goofy title like supervising producers or something. And so we were involved in the casting for the part of Larry. And I had seen Mark Lynn Baker in a movie called My Favorite Year with Peter O'Toole. Mm-hmm. And I said, we ought to read him for this part. Well, he came in, and he and Bronson just clicked. I mean, they were terrific. So we had to reshoot the pilot with Mark Lynn as Larry, and they were both absolutely brilliant. They came from completely different acting backgrounds, but they worked so well together.
They did. They knew the show that they were making, and every week they knew how to. I'm curious, like as a writing staff, would you guys? I mean, Did it feel like you were writing for like a Lewis and Martin act? Like it was just these two guys riffing and going back and forth with one another?
I used to go down to the stage during lunch. I'd take a lunch down and watch them. And Mark was a very highly disciplined stage actor. And there was a stage direction in a script that said, Larry enters dejected. I watched Mark Lynn-Baker come in, his body language. He learned he rehearsed how to slam the door in such a way that it wouldn't catch. So he'd have to slam it 2 or 3 times, get mad at it. He would take off his coat and toss it onto a coat rack in such a way that it would hang there for just a second and then fall off.
Yes.
Then he'd take his keys out of his pocket and throw them on the little table by the door in such a way that they would slide across and then fall off the edge. And he would rehearse that for like half an hour to get it down perfect. And of course, when he came in, when you shot the show, that was 30 seconds.
Yeah.
For the stage direction. So you were writing 25-page scripts for a 30-minute sitcom because otherwise you'd be 6 minutes long. It was crazy. And Bronson was just the other way. Bronson was this intuitive, wild guy that had absolutely brilliant ideas and would weave them into these reactions. And so together it was just wonderful. They would always elevate the quality of the script.
Let's talk a little bit, just for people who aren't familiar with the way that live sitcom television is produced. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the nuts and bolts. So essentially, you were talking about earlier about the six weeks out, you were constantly moving scripts through in different phases. So let's just take one episode of Perfect Strangers. You would start when, by the time, give us the timeline of when you would start writing it to when it finally was shot and in the can. About how long did it take to produce one episode of Perfect Strangers, and what were the steps along the way?
Well, the first step is you sit in a room with the writing staff and you come up with a story. And most writing rooms had a bulletin board with 3x5 cards with very basic ideas. You know, Lucy crushes grapes. But the first week is pitching out the story. And once you get sort of the major bones of the story, then the exec producers got to go to the network and pitch that to make sure that, you know, you're not doing a story that the show that's on before you is doing the same story and get network approval.
Got it. Yeah.
The second week, now you're going through the story in greater detail with probably some of the writing staff, not all of them, and the person that's going to write the script. And the object of those meetings is to really structure out enough of the story so that the writer can go off and write an outline. Third week is you're noting the outline. All the writers get copies, sit in a room, make suggestion, pitch, basically story. You're still on story. Fourth week, you've come back and you've got a first draft from the writer, and that's noted. Now you're pitching jokes, more greater and greater detail. And this is another thing Gary was very good at. Somebody would pitch something and he would say, that's a Friday note. Don't deal with that now. That's too soon. Fifth week, you'd have a second draft from the writer, and you'd sit around and table the script. You'd try to get into as good a form as you could, because that was the product of that rewrite was going to be the script you read on Monday morning. So the sixth week was Monday morning, read the script. Writers go off and punch it up, do rewrites. Now that they've heard the actors say the lines, they've got a better clue as to what needs work. Tuesday, the director's been on the stage all day rehearsing with the actors. Tuesday, we usually had 4:00 run-throughs. You'd run through the script with the cast. You'd give the director notes, the cast notes. The writers would go back and rewrite the script. Wednesday, you'd come in. Director would work with the cast and the rewrites. 4:00 run-through with the network. the network would now give notes. Everybody would give notes to everybody. The writers would go back and make the final pass, rewriting the script. That was pretty much it. If it didn't get in on Wednesday night, forget about it. I never agreed with the idea of doing a rewrite on shoot night. Thursday was a technical day. Writers didn't go down there. That was the director's day.
So the script was locked by Wednesday night. The script was locked.
By the rewrite that went out to the cast Wednesday night, that was it.
And so technically,
for us now, different shows work different ways. Friends had a different process, crisis writing. But Thursday was a tech day when there was 3-camera. All of our shows were, except for much later in our career, were 35 millimeter film shows. So they were all shot on dollies. You had to mark off the stage with dolly marks. And so Friday came in, you do a run through at 4 o'clock, minor notes, some director notes for camera and stuff like that. But then at 7 o'clock, you'd bring in the audience and you'd shoot the show. And since so many of our shows, with the exception of Perfect Strangers, had minors in them, you had to finish by 9 o'clock. I mean, that was it. So sometimes you'd shoot some lines from minors during the 4 o'clock run through or dress rehearsal, because everybody was in costume. You could pick those up for inserting later.
How long would you shoot with an audience?
We would rarely shoot with an audience past 2 hours. Usually we were out in an hour and a half, because by then it was, Ron Howard was an interesting actor. By Monday morning, he forgot all of his dialogue from the previous Friday. He just had trained himself to get it out of his head. So if you had to bring him into a looping session, you had to have a script with you, because he wouldn't remember what the line was.
Yeah, so the actors, they get that script on that Monday morning, but really they're getting changes throughout the week. So they're learning their lines, but they're not really putting them to memory probably until that last 24, 48 hours.
Right. Yeah. They know there's going to be changes.
When you're filming the episode, do you go through the scenes multiple times, or do you run through it as a complete show and then run it again at all? Or is it just, how does the filming take place?
Well, we would go through the dress rehearsal top to bottom, not stopping. Show night, we do each scene, and then we'd stop, and the writers and the actors and the director would all kind of convene in a little huddle and say, do we have this? And if everybody agreed we had it, then we'd move on to the next scene. There's an interesting, I know you're going to get to Family Matters, but Jaleel White was the most brilliant 13-year-old I ever met. Wow. And we did a bowling show once. So you've got the standard, where the ball return and the seats, and it's Carl and Jay are bowling. And we shoot the scene, we all get together. Everybody says, man, it was great. It went perfect. And Jay says, I don't think you're going to like it. And we said, why? And he said, I was looking in the wrong direction of the B camera. It's not going to cut.
Wow.
Well, none of us noticed that. So we said, well, let's shoot it again. We're here. We got the set. We got the actors. We got the bowling balls. So we shoot it. Next week, I get in an editing session, because I usually went to the editing sessions with Jim Miley. And he says, boy, am I glad you shot the bowling scene again.
Wow.
Jay was right. You're looking for help wherever you get it.
I remember the first time I realized, I'd heard that adage that film is the director's medium, but television is the writer's medium. And I'd heard that, and the first time I saw that, like in real practice, because I had been on film sets before, but when I went to see a taping of Everybody Loves Raymond, and a friend of mine was like a P. This was obviously years ago. A friend of mine, my old roommate, was actually a PA on the show, and so I went to one of the tapings, and I remember watching where they're shooting a scene and, it goes really well. Big laugh. Everyone enjoys it. Everyone claps. And they did what you said. They stop after the scene and you see the big huddle. And before the huddle, when the scene ended and everyone's clapping, the director jumps out of his chair and is like, that was fantastic. And you see the cast like laughing, like, yeah, that was great. And but there's one guy who never got up out of his chair. and it was, what's his name? The showrunner. I forget his name. Yeah. And then you see everyone kind of huddle around him. And I don't know, maybe 30 seconds afterwards, all of a sudden the crowd breaks and you see him go, let's run it again. And literally you see the director turn and go, okay, everybody, let's run it again. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's the guy in charge.
Yeah, right. He was very good. That was a very well-written show, I thought.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a great show. So let's talk a little bit, and thank you for that. I think that's going to help a lot of people understand. Different shows have different processes, but that's kind of the traditional way in which a situational comedy multi-camera was shot and kind of functioned. So
thanks to Desi Arnaz.
I know. That's
Desi
right.
Arnaz created that process.
I Love Lucy. Yeah. So where did the idea come from to spin off a character from Perfect Strangers into their own show?
Well, it's one of the most misunderstood myths of television. ABC wanted to do a Black comedy show, and we found that there was no place in Perfect Strangers, mainly because of the time constraints. The shows kept getting longer and longer and longer. So we started eliminating people. And you will recall that Perfect Strangers had a character that ran this thrift store place.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Which that character got cut. Yeah. And Harriet, the elevator operator, was going to get cut. Yeah. But we wanted to take care of her. So we put her in the new show, which was called Family Matters. Tom Miller had this idea that it would be a multi-generational Black show, and the character of the grandmother would have this break front china cabinet, and each week she would take an object out of this china cabinet and would relate the story of how she came by this in her varied career of working for very famous people, including the Queen of England.
Wow.
Bill and I didn't know how to write that. And we said, Tom, I don't know how you write that. I mean, God forbid we go for 100 episodes. Is she going to have 100 objects in this break room? So we wrote a pilot, and it had far too many characters. And I thought it was the worst piece of writing we had ever written. We shot the pilot. My wife and I went to England for a vacation. She said, how can you go away while this show is being viewed by the network? I said, don't worry about it. Not in a million years are they going to pick up this show. Wow. It's a terrible pilot. I get a call while we're in London from Tom's secretary saying, you got to get back here. ABC has picked up Family Matters. I said, you got to be kidding. This year's pilots must have really been terrible. So we go back, and now the process is each week we're making a pilot to try to figure out what the heck the show is, because it can't be about grandma finding objects. And so around about episode 10, we didn't have a script for episode 10, and it's coming up in 3 weeks or so. So I remembered that we had written a script called I don't know, Remember When or something, for NBC. And we turned in the script, and we got a call from the development people at NBC for a meeting. And we figured, okay, they're going to give us notes in the pilot. we go in, and the purpose of the meeting is for the NBC execs to insult us and say, this is the worst pilot we've ever read in our lives.
Oh, man.
It's gross. It's offensive. What were you guys thinking? You got a guy in here that apparently eats mice. Goodbye. Never come back again. So we left thinking, well, that was weird. That could have been a phone call. It would have been just as embarrassing. So we pulled out that script, and the script was about a little girl's first date at school, and her dad tries to fix her up, her brother tries to fix her up, and in the end, of course, a very nice kid from the school invites her to the dance, and all is well. So we changed the name of the characters, we did a rewrite in about 4 hours, and that became Laura's first date. So now we go to casting, and Jaleel White comes in. I think he's 13. He's got the wardrobe, he's got the voice, he's got the glasses. He's this character.
He came in as Urkel.
He came in as Urkel. It was amazing.
Wow.
So we say, okay, cast this guy. It was a one-off. It was a guest star part. So we go to the reading. And I mean, he just knocked it out of the park. And after the reading's over, Tom and Bob ask us over, and they say, Tom says, make an all-episode produced deal with that kid as fast as you can.
Wow.
They signed him up that day. And that, unfortunately, was a story of cast jealousy, because he stole the show. I mean, it became the Steve Urkel show.
It did. It became, I remember watching it the first season and then watching it the second season and going, oh, this is a different show. This is the Steve Urkel show. Yeah,
absolutely. And we pared down the cast. We got we cut one of the minors. We tried to make it more economical, but definitely the Steve Urkel show. And I felt sorry for the other cast members who were legitimately the stars of the show, but that would be a big ego bruising situation.
Well,
but we did 250 episodes. No, we did 215 episodes of that show.
Wow. Yeah, that I can see why, especially because he's a kid, he's coming in and kind of supplanting, but once again, he enters the zeitgeist like Fonzie.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, people are quoting him. They are like, his quotes are being put on T-shirts and mugs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it becomes this thing. And really, that was kind of, I'm trying to remember correctly. I think you guys had 3 shows on TGIF at that point. That was kind of when TGIF kind of reached its zenith point, wasn't it? Was at the height of Urkel's popularity.
It was Perfect Strangers,
Full House,
Step by Step.
Yep.
Family Matters, and Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Yep.
For a season, we're all on at the same time. And we almost died.
I bet you did. Wait, now, but Full House was on at the same, but Miller Boyette was Full House, but not you guys, right?
No, we weren't on Full House.
Yeah. But
Full House was really what started that sort of adolescent oriented comedy for ABC that was so successful, because Full House launched Perfect Strangers.
Right.
We did 6 episodes behind Full House on Tuesday nights.
Oh, on Tuesday nights before they moved to Friday.
Right. That's what really launched the show. We got a big audience.
So then they moved you guys to Friday.
Right.
Got it. Okay. And then so Family Matters just explodes and it just takes off. And now you're, like you said, you've had to reduce the cast a little bit and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about whenever you feel like you've caught lightning in a bottle as a writer, as a creator. Was it one of those things where you're like, okay, what kind of crazy scenario can we get Steve into this week? Like, what was the writing process for that show kind of going forward? Because obviously, like you said, he was such a talented performer, kind of similar to Henry Winkler. Like you guys were just, did you kind of pull from your experience with Happy Days and Gary with they were doing with Fonzie, with kind of what you were trying to do with Urkel?
Well, with Family Matters, in a way, it was really easier because, first of all, we had the dynamic of Steve Urkel is in love with Laura. Laura wants nothing to do with it. Steve Urkel sees the father as sort of the father figure in his life. The father doesn't want anything to do with him. So, and the mother's attitude is whenever Steve comes over, he breaks something. So there was a lot of sort of built-in dynamics to play with the characters. So it was kind of an abundance of riches. And in the first season of Family Matters was really rough going. ABC was very unhappy with the show, and again, in one of those weird intersections of time, a bunch of the ABC execs came down the week that we were shooting the first episode with Steve Urkel, Laura's first date. And the talk on the way walking down to the stage was, we're really concerned about the show. It's going to struggling in the ratings. We really need something that's going to break out. So we went down to the stage, watched the filming of the Steve Urkel first episode. And somebody, I think maybe it was Bob Boyette, who turned to the ABC guys and said, "Is that enough of a breakout for you?" I mean, the audience went crazy over this kid. I mean, I just never seen anything quite like it since Fonzie. So you're always looking for that guy, but it's so hard to engineer. I mean, it just happens.
Yeah. What led to the move? This is a little inside baseball, but for people who remember the show, what led to the move to CBS? Obviously, the show had been on for a while. Obviously, the ratings had started to go down a little bit, but what led to the eventual move from ABC to CBS?
ABC wanted to cancel Step by Step. And there was some kind of contractual arrangement that we could not sell one of the shows to another network for more money than what ABC was paying. I think it's a kind of a standard thing. They don't want you to have a hit show in their network and sell it to somebody else and make more money. So Bob Boyette engineered this deal with CBS. He said, what we'll do is we'll sell you Family Matters for slightly less money than ABC's paying us. And we'll sell you Step by Step for whatever you want to give us, because ABC's basically canceled it. So it's a free agent. So that's how those shows got bundled to go to CBS. The problem for CBS is their audience wasn't familiar with these shows, and the public I ran into people constantly who had no idea during that season that those shows were still on the air.
It's crazy. It's so different as it is now. Whereas back then, networks had real identities with their shows, and you would tune in, and oftentimes people would just leave the channel on. So like if you were coming and watching an 8 o'clock show, you would just watch it all the way through to the news. Yeah. And so they didn't know that they were on another network to look at.
Right. So CBS got hurt in the process, but we didn't.
Well, and Step by Step was this other kind of really fun show. Did it start out as a Suzanne Summers vehicle or as a Patrick Duffy vehicle, or was it really, hey, let's go out and create a show around both of these? Like, I'm curious how that.
It was ABC said to us, we want to do Brady Bunch.
Got it.
It's that simple. We want to do the Brady Bunch.
Got it.
Yours, mine, and always. So we went out casting, and Suzanne had just done a show called She's the Sheriff.
Oh, yes.
Which was on the lot. It was on the MGM lot.
Yep. It was on NBC. It was on NBC, I think, right?
Yeah, we took a meeting with her, and she was delightful, and we thought, well, this is great. This will be the mother wife. And somebody said, you ought to talk to Patrick Duffy because I guess it was coming off Dallas or I don't know. Yep. And Patrick Duffy is a wildly funny man. I mean, he broke us up in the room.
Really?
So we thought, well, hey, this seems to work, and we got very lucky with the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I call them kids. They were 17, 18 years old, some of them, but put the show together pretty quickly, and then we went looking for the sort of screwball character in the show, because these were parents with children, so they had to be relatively stable.
Right.
And we found the character of Cody,
mm-hmm.
who was kind of an off-the-wall surfer dude. Yes. and in real life, he was an off-the-wall surfer dude. So we got very lucky with the show, and it fit into the TGIF mold. So we did 165 episodes.
Man, I know you are bringing back some memories right now, just talking about these shows back to back. You have such a long history with casting kids, right? The child actors, people under the age of 17. You have such a great record of there's just so many great performers in your show. Was there a particular kind of secret that you and the casting directors you'd work with? Was there anything that you looked for in particular that for the kind of performers that you were looking for your shows?
We had great casting directors, but the person who was really instrumental was Bob Boyett. Bob Boyett cast Henry Winkler.
Oh, wow.
Bob Boyett cast the Olsen twins. Bob Boyett cast Cody. Gosh, I've gone blank on his name. You get to be my age, there's a lot of names that go away. Bob had an incredible instinct for, I think Jaleel White was the only person Bob wasn't involved in the casting of, but it was so obvious to see at that first reading that, you could have been a dunce and known that was the kid you need to sign up.
The Hangin' with Mr. Cooper was a show that you guys kind of similar to Love Boat, right? Like you were given the show, like you were asked to, you didn't create it or anything like that, but it had been on the air for a couple of years and you were given the show and asked to make tweaks or just kind of keep it going. What was that experience like?
Well, the worst thing for a production company or a studio is to get a show on the air for 3 years and have it canceled, because there's very little syndication money.
Yes,
that's right. Going to return all that deficit.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just explain that for people, because the syndication window was 5 years, right? Like you needed a show to be on the air for 5 years.
Well, you needed a show on the air for 5 years to get a good syndication return, but you definitely had to have 4 seasons, because 4 seasons gave you enough to strip the show, meant you were running it 5 days a week in reruns in the daytime.
Right, because you had 22, 24 episodes.
Well, back then you had 24 episodes a year, so that got you to 96 shows.
Yep.
And Hangin' with Mr. Cooper was sort of on the bubble, as the network says, and they were thinking about canceling it. So ABC came to us and said, look, if you can do one more season of this, and the studio was gung-ho. It was like, we'll do anything you want. And we came in, we looked at a bunch of episodes, and we said, one of the problems with the show, it's just been all over the place. I mean, the characters' attitudes changed. And so first of all, we just need to clean up the structure and get everybody on attitude, on point. I think we let a couple of the cast go because, again, it was the problem of ABC back during that area. If they had a problem, they'd just throw extra cast members. If we keep adding people, maybe we'll get lucky. So we did 100. I think we did 22 or maybe 30 episodes to bring it up to a realistic syndication package. I don't think the show ever did great in syndication, but it recouped the studio's deficit. So everybody was happy.
When you come into a show like that already, what are some of the unique challenges you found with coming into a show with already established characters, already established kind of way of doing things? Do you kind of feel like the grown up in the room, that everyone's kind of looking at you like, here comes this guy, or were they very accepting of you, like, oh yes, we're so glad you're here?
Well, I think we had enough of a resume by that point that they figured this was a good thing. I mean, these guys that did Step by Step and Family Matters are coming in to help. But we sat in the room with each one of the cast members separately and said, tell us about your character. And the thing that was very clear is they had no idea what their character was, because they had played so many different things. I'm the introvert, I'm the extrovert, so we talked with them to develop a character right then in the room to say, can you be happy with this? Does this work for you? And the response we got from everybody is, oh, that's great. Now I know who the character is. So writing the show was not that difficult. And Mark Curry was a very sharp, instinctive comic.
Yeah.
We had a deal with him. He said, they never let me try my own stuff. And I said, I tell you what, at the run through on Tuesday night, you could try whatever you want. And if we like it and it's funny, it'll be in the script. And it was. I would say about 70% of what he pitched, we said, write that down. That's good stuff. 30% of it was kind of like, what does that mean? But he was great to work with. We brought Marklin Baker over to direct some of the Hanging with the Cooper episodes. We actually did our passion project, which we called the Plumbing Show. The Plumbing Show was a character wants to add a bathroom to their home. It started way back on a syndicated show called, Please Stand By, which was done for the NBC O&O group. The father wants to add a bathroom upstairs, and it's a disaster. So then we did it on Perfect Strangers. We did it on Step by Step. We did it on a couple of we did it on Cooper.
That's like your go-to.
Well, we just thought it was fun to sort of take an idea and see how different people did it.
Yeah.
And I actually have all those episodes on a reel somewhere. That's
that's great.
For the TV museum.
That's great. When you look back at your career, having written, I mean, what are we looking at? 400 or having produced like 600, 800, however many countless hours of television. Do you have a favorite or two that you look back on of just episodes that you're particularly proud of, ones that maybe were hitting at a particular time in your life that gave them a greater resonance, or the performance, or just anything in particular? Are there certain episodes that you look back on of your work where you are particularly proud of?
Well, I think a lot of the Perfect Strangers episodes, particularly because I fell in love with the actors, and like I say, they always brought the writing up to a higher level. Some shows you're kind of struggling with the cast to get them up to the level of the writing. You look back on the Tom Hanks Happy Days episode and you say that was pretty cool. But I forget. I don't even remember. I don't think we wrote that episode. One time I was watching TV and I saw an episode of Happy Days, and our credits came up at the end as writers, and I had no memory of the show. I mean, I couldn't have told you we wrote that episode if you put a gun to my head.
That's great. That's great.
One time, I'm sure you've heard that Laverne and Shirley went through a series of producers. The girls drove the producers nuts. And we're walking along across the lot one day, and Gary Marshall's coming the other way. And I said to Bill, you know what he's going to ask us? And Gary comes up to us and he says, I don't suppose you guys would be interested in producing Laverne and Shirley. I said, Gary, come on, we're your friends. You don't ask your friends to do that.
You don't ask friends to produce Laverne.
Yeah, right. Come on.
Oh, that's good. That's funny. That's funny. I'm also impressed that you haven't done a Gary Marshall impersonation, because usually when I talk to people, they do their Gary. You know.
Yeah, it's so characteristic, though. It's easy to mimic. You know, yes. Gary was the guy you never wanted to have lunch with because he tried to talk while he was eating. Yeah, it's not a pretty picture.
I love it. I'm going to get you out of here with this. You tell one of my favorite anecdotes. When I was going through the Act One program in 2001, and you came and spoke, you told this really funny story about guys coming in to pitch you guys on a new TV show. And I wonder if you could tell that story to my listening audience about.
Well, this was a time, and it was a very short time. It was only for like a season or two, that the studio asked us to sort of screen pilot ideas. And, Warner Brothers had this writer's workshop thing that you went to. It was like 13 weeks, and different producers on the lot were asked to come in and talk for one of these sessions. But then we also heard people just come in and say, hi, how are you? I'm Bob, I'm George. Okay, here's the idea. There's a father that's really, really bigoted person. He's just this incredible right-winger guy. And his wife is this kind of ditzy person that doesn't quite get anything and is kind of slow. And then he's got these two kids. I think it was two kids, I'm not sure, but one of them is a real liberal guy, and he's very progressive, and he's always in the face of the father, who's this extreme conservative. And then there's a daughter that's sort of the peacemaker. She's trying to always make peace between the other three characters. And we kind of listened to this for a while. I said, isn't that All in the Family? I mean, that's exactly All in the Family. And the guy says, no, that's not All in the Family. This is with gnomes. I said, gnomes? He said, yeah, little foresty creatures. We build these little tiny sets so we can save a lot of money on production. And we hire little people to be the actors. That's when I thought, I gotta tell Warner Brothers this isn't going to work.
And guess what? Someone somewhere is going to make that, and we're going to be the dopes.
Good luck casting that.
Oh man, I love that story. Little sets and everything. I love how everything's right. Little. The little
save money on costumes, less fabric.
It's so stupid. I love it. Okay. Well, this has been, I've loved talking to you. I know the audience have just really enjoyed this. This has been so much fun, Michael. I really appreciate you just giving us your time. And
thank you for having me.
It's been a real blessing. I always try to close all of our podcasts by praying for our guests. Would you allow me to pray for you?
Absolutely. I need all the prayers I can get.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for today. Thank you for just the opportunity to be able to speak with my friend Michael. God, I just want to pray a blessing upon him right now. Just pray a blessing upon his life. And I know they're going to be doing some traveling soon. Just want to pray for traveling graces for them. God, thank you for Michael and his testimony and who he is and everything that he's done, and just his witness to you and for you. To so many. And
God, we just ask that you continue to just let Michael just know how much you love him, how much he means to you. God, I pray that he would feel your presence in his life. And I just pray for protection and guidance for him and his family, and just a blessing on everything he's working on now. And we just pray this in Jesus' name, and your promises we stand. Amen.
Thank you for listening to the Act One podcast. Celebrating over 20 years as the premier training program for Christians in Hollywood, Act One is a Christian community of entertainment industry professionals who train and equip storytellers to create works of truth, goodness, and beauty. The Act One program is a division of Master Media International. To financially support the mission of Act One, or to learn more about our programs, visit us online at actoneprogram.com. And to learn more about the work of Master Media, go to mastermedia.com.